Assalamu alaikum, you're watching Views on News and I'm Faisal Rehman live from our Islamabad studios. Today we'll be talking about the economy of Pakistan, the political uncertainty and the market reaction. On top of that, as we all know that yesterday there was quite an upset in the bipolar elections, and interestingly out of those 15 of the seats they were won by Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf, 4 Pakistan Muslim League and 1 was independent. Now interestingly, now it seems that what if the PMLN government is no more in Punjab, number one. What if the pressure is exerted on the federal government? What is going to happen? Are we in fact heading towards an early election, or perhaps this particular government is going to continue? What sort of an impact IMF is going to have if this particular government is not in power? So obviously we are already short of $4 billion which we are seeking from the brotherly and friendly countries like Qatar or Kuwait for that matter, or other countries. Good news was that the rollover was there as far as the Chinese money is concerned. Again, some sort of commitment also was given by Saudi Arabia. So things seem to be a little better. But now, having said that, for the first time, rupee crossed 215 rupees. I would say it's a psychological barrier. It ended up around 215.20. Whereas in the open market, when we talk about the open market, dollar wasn't even available. You talk about the stock market, the reaction was 700 points. 700 points, I mean negative. It in fact opened at a negative zone. So you can well imagine the market reaction, and this is all because of this uncertainty factor that is directly related with your economy. But before I introduce you to our panelists and we talk about this given subject, our production team has prepared a report. Let's watch that.
Pakistan has been facing many political as well as economic challenges since Shehbaz Sharif has taken the office of Prime Minister. However, Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif-led team is tackling these challenges with quite dedication and commitment. The recent success of staff-level agreement between IMF and Pakistan is a strong proof of this commitment to fight with Pakistan's economic challenges. In this regard, Finance Minister Miftah Ismail said that government has averted default towards which Pakistan was pushed by the PTI government. The Finance Minister termed a record increase in debt by Imran Khan's government as the single biggest reason for pushing the country towards these economically hazardous situations. He also criticized Imran Khan for ignoring power sector and not buying the LNG and oil when these were available at historic low prices in the international market. On the other hand, while reiterating Pakistan's resilience before the international community, Federal Minister for Planning, Development and Special Initiatives SN Iqbal presented Pakistan's voluntary national review on sustainable development goals at the United Nations High-Level Political Forum 2022 and said that despite having formidable global and national challenges, Pakistan followed its development plans in partnership with the international community and local stakeholders.
And now to talk about it, we have with us in our studio, on my right is Ali Salman Saab, Executive Director of Prime Institute. Thank you very much, Ali Saab, for your time, sir.
Thank you.
And we will be also talking to Zishan Merchant Saab, former President of KTBA. He's an economist, and he's also going to join us on the telephone. But let me start off, Ali, from a very interesting development. That is about the election that was held yesterday. I'm talking about these by-elections in which the turnout was around 49%, imagine. And interestingly, out of those 15 seats were won by Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf. Again, 4 won by PMLN, though they lost 3 seats out of 4 in Lahore, and then 1 was an independent from Lodhra. Now the interesting aspect is that one of the seats that PMLN won hardly had a difference of I think 49 seats. 49. Now that was almost parallel. The recounting has been ordered, but the point is that this particular number that you have received means that perhaps you can have your own government in Punjab. I'm talking about this coalition of Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf and PMLQ. Now, sir, that is going to change the entire story. Political uncertainty, this is what I'm talking about here. This particular impression is definitely going to lead on the economy. As we earlier talked about the IMF issue, First tranche of 1.17 has been announced. We were supposed to get it in a day or two, perhaps, in the coming days. And remaining, we were supposed to get as well. We were still minus 4 billion short in terms of dollars, which we are seeking from the friendly countries from the Arab world. Now, so everything is going to be in a jeopardy. We all know. This is the reason the market reacted. Dollar went well over 215. Stock market went down around 700 points. Where will it lead, and what impression is going to make it stop? Or do you think till 22nd everything is going to be pretty much fragile and fluid?
Well, I think first of all, talking about the political context is important. And without talking about any particular partisan support here, I would like to say that I am pleased with the results. First of all, I think this has strengthened the belief in democracy. Right? Because there had been a lot of talk, including the PTI leadership, that they are not trusting the system, the so-called establishment. But now we have seen that if there is clear public support and public mobilization in favor of any party leader or a program or narrative, as we say, then perhaps this can prevail. So this should definitely be a good sign. And also, this so-called conspiracy theories have been weakened, I think, as a result of this election. It's also given a strong signal to the political parties, including PMLN, that they need to reform themselves if they want to survive in the next elections. And I think as far as the arrangement is concerned, the way I see it, the framework which is provided by the Constitution, if this framework is respected by political parties, then I do see contest and competition. I think we can still prevail. This is also a test of broader political dispensation, not just one political party, that we can survive and coexist within these differences as far as we can deliver according to the mandate.
That sounds really good, sir. But this 22nd of July is an important date.
It seems that the party...
And secondly, sir, till 22nd, we have got a few days, working days, let me put it this way. Number one question is that what do you see? I mean, the same impact, like market says, wait and see strategy is being applied. Do you think that is going to be the case? Or perhaps if post 22nd, PTI is unable to form the government in Punjab, this particular sentiment is going to continue?
I think it depends on first of all, the statement we are waiting from PMLN leadership. I think the Nawaz Sharif has called a meeting today, and we will wait to hear the official sort of announcement coming from that meeting.
The response, basically.
The response, and there is initial signals that they are accepting the results, and this should lead to perhaps early resolution of the political situation, and we should see an election, and then the signs are clear that the PTI is going to form the government. And I don't see a problem in this process itself as long as these announcements can be made early on. Because the more time we take, any party would take in making these announcements, there will be, of course, an effect on the markets. The market sentiment is a response or a reaction to the level of certainty or uncertainty in these political contexts. So I hope that the leadership...
And unfortunately, rumors matter more.
Yeah, rumors matter more, definitely. Yeah. And so this will affect, but also, I mean, we can talk about it later, but I think the timing has been quite interesting, and it is almost coincided with our agreement with IMF. Staff level agreement has been reached. Of course, the board level approval is still awaited, as we'll see, but more or less these details would be reflected in the final agreement.
And one more question, sir. For example, if there is some sort of a delay as far as IMF is concerned, because they also, in fact, look at it from a very different perspective. They want their money back, and they want that money should be utilized in the right way, the way they want. And on top, if tough decisions are to be taken, normally, for example, Pakistan Muslim League Nawaz took some very, I would say, strict decisions. They had to raise the prices of oil, they had to raise the prices of electricity, gas, as energy in general, your utility bills, and it had its own impact on almost everything. Now, a lot of people believe that So the most important factor is going to be your inflation, number one. Your interest rate currently by the State Bank of Pakistan is at 15%, I think one of the highest ever, if I'm not wrong, sir. Number three, overall global recession, the effects of the Ukrainian war on all of us. Food security and expensive food.
Well, these factors.
Ukraine currently hold 22 million tons of, I'm not just talking about wheat, forget about barley or other products. This produced 22.2 billion, million tons of it still in their stores.
Yeah.
And they have been unable to harvest for the next season. And this one they can't export.
Yeah. No, actually, what will be more interesting that last year, for 49% of our wheat import, we depended on Ukraine. So that's a significant number, and this will have.
We are still 3 million short.
We are already having global repercussions of this situation. But I think what we need to happen is an early resolution of the political dynamics here, and as well as the clarity on the IMF program. Now, IMF program is there, and their main mandate is actually to ensure that the country does not default. And it's not necessarily lead to structural reform that we are talking about. And the decisions which you mentioned, by the way, are more of a course correction. Yes, they were difficult decisions, but they were long overdue. And they also, as we know, that PTI government actually sort of fell short of the commitments they had made with the IMF program, and that was why initially this program was suspended.
Because at the end of the day, I believe at the end of the day, it's how you negotiate. It's all about the art of negotiation, where it should be felt as if it's a win-win situation for both the parties.
It's about negotiation, but I think it's also about the seriousness of the implementation of these reforms.
But what if the government announces early elections? Let's suppose. What if they do and what if they do not? Let me put this question to Zishan Merchant Saab, who is the former president of KTBA, a senior economist. Assalamu alaikum ji.
Ji, walaikum salam.
I hope all is good at your end, sir. Zishan Saab, question is very simple, sir. Now we can see the impact of this political uncertainty. Unfortunately, you talk about on dollar, you talk about what happened in the stock market today or otherwise. I mean, people are very, very uncertain. And this is the time when wait and see strategy comes into play. You being a businessman, an economist, somebody who has this eye to understand the dynamics of how things work out in the financial world, tell us, sir, what if the government announces an early election? What if they don't?
So, didn't we face this situation 3 months ago, more or less? Because one government finished it and they were thrown out, and the PMLN came in, and there was this period of uncertainty, and then there was lack of decision making. Then they started to take decisions, and then things started to, I would say, they started to shape a bit. And again, after yesterday's election, again we are thinking on these lines that things are going to become uncertain again. And if the elections happen early, then we are in another challenging position. In my personal view, I would say, if I look at the economic survey, it says that we were growing at 6%. And prior to that year, we were growing at 5.6%. So all of a sudden, what happened to us? Did we do something that went very wrong? Or the dynamics of the growth changed? Or the crops or the large-scale manufacturing sector stopped working? What happened? Actually, it was this political uncertainty which led to all these theories and all these conspiracy theories. Let's be very honest that these were the narratives that were built not overnight, but over the period of time, and that started to hurt the economy. Because as the businesses, they do not like to invest or put in their money when the things are uncertain. I was talking to somebody today only that if this chaos is going to be there for another, let's say, a week or two, then again we are going to see the difficult scenario. We saw a record growth of dollar today. The stock markets went down. What happened since yesterday? Nothing happened apart from these by-elections. So did we do something wrong? Or what happened? So you see, we are a reactive market. We do decisions on reactive basis. The stock market is totally based on the sentiment, and if they feel that something is going to go wrong, the market crashes immediately. I mean, didn't we see the bumper profits last year and prior to last year? What happened now? You see, I totally feel that this is a narrative being built whereby everybody is now taking position to hold back. In my view, as you must have read the news that we had received record remittances. It surpassed $31 billion this year.
That's correct.
And the exports have increased from last year. Exports of goods and exports of services both have increased last year. So what went wrong? I think uncertainty. I think political chaos. I mean, I don't think that IMF would say that they are not willing to negotiate with anybody. They would negotiate with anyone, provided there is consistency in the approach, provided how do they tackle the situation. I totally feel that we are trying to, politically trying to create a chaos which is not there. What we should do at this point of time is that we should, I think we should build a narrative that not all is bad and things are going in a direction which they were supposed to go. But
now,
all this political chaos will lead to these uncertainties.
Yeah, Merchant Saab, now the point is that one of the analysts, I was going through a couple of newspapers today, and one of the analysts from Karachi, in fact, she said that this political uncertainty or the, let's call them events, recently whatever is going on, she says that, it's going to continue. This roller coaster ride of dollar is going to continue throughout this week. So today is Monday, market closes on Friday. So what exactly do you predict as far as dollar is concerned? Because stock market, obviously, it opened on a negative note today, went down further by 700 points. So it will recover, and that same sort of a movement we are also going to witness the way we'll look at dollar. I think most likely your stock market is going to move the same way.
So, if you recall that prior to it, there was this tweet circulating all over the social media that Pakistan is supposed to devalue its currency by 15%. So, if you look at it in that perspective, the currency is going to go till 225 rupees to a dollar. But I am an optimist person. I feel that since the international prices are scaling down, the petrol prices are internationally coming down, the food price, the commodity prices are coming down, the other commodities that Pakistan imports, those commodities are coming down. So the pressure on dollar would go a little down, and if the quantum of import may be the same, but your export of dollar, the payments in dollar would lessen. So that would give a little breather to Pakistan, and your current account deficit would somewhere down the road in a month or two would get settled. So I believe that yes, you may see a roller coaster for the week or two, but going forward, I think that the value of dollar should remain somewhere close to 185 rupees, and that's the par level that it should be. But again, your budget on which you have projected your tax revenues. I was at a discussion where this was.
Merchant Sahab, we always talk about various reasons, why the dollar is going up. Political uncertainty, economic or demand of dollar, your import-export parity, that is again a problem. Whereas in the international markets, yes, other than ruble, most of these currencies have weakened against dollar as well, including the Japanese yen. Now, currently, sir, you talked about the oil prices. Today, it was slightly over 99, or maybe around 99, with an increase of $2 a barrel. Now, again, the visit of the American president to Saudi Arabia was also very important. Major discussion was on the oil issue. Now, my point here, sir, that considering what's going on at the moment regarding the demand and supply of dollar, another news that I would like to share, that during the last couple of weeks, $1.1 billion have been withdrawn from the banks by the consumers. So you can well imagine uncertainty. This is what it is all about. Whether they're keeping that money at home, or maybe it has gone abroad through Honda or Hundi or Hawala. I mean, that is still going on, we all know. But what I'm saying is, sir, that again, at the end of the day, if you remember, it was 1993, if I'm not wrong, or perhaps 1996, 96, the second tenure of Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif, when the dollar account was frozen. I still remember the actual price was well over 55, 98, during the 96 government, right, sir? And because of these bombs and everything, nuclear explosions, and eventually it was given to the consumer at 47 rupees, not dollars, 47 rupees per dollar. What I'm saying is this again, creates a lot of uncertainty that most likely if this IMF deal doesn't go through or something else happens, what if we are unable to get that money from the friendly countries, then obviously, sir, people have no other choice other than what they're doing.
So obviously, there is this pressure everywhere. Pakistan is not getting the desired loans they were hoping to get from the friendly neighbors and countries. They've been asking us to first go back to IMF program, and then they will reconsider. And then there are these interest payments and the principal payments Pakistan has to repay. So all of them are putting pressure on the reserves that we have. And there was this position, I was talking to somebody who is an importer, and he was telling me that the banks now require these businesses to inform them 3 days prior to their payment dates or their documents that they have to release from the bank. So because there are no dollars available with the private bank. So there is this situation whereby these businesses are getting hurt. And obviously that we are in a crunchy situation. So everybody and anybody who is in a position to press Pakistan at this point of time is calling their shots. So that is also creating another pressure internationally on Pakistan to, I would not use the word bend down in front of them, but the challenge is that they will now have to listen to all these people. Because in the past, Saudi Arabia, UAE, they were always supporting Pakistan. China was always supporting. We've been saying this since last 70 years that China has been our biggest partner, our biggest friend in everything. So now, I mean, what has changed in the last...
All right. Thank you very much, sir, for your comments, sir. Your reaction to what Merchant Sahab said?
Well, I think it is important to understand, first of all, to which extent we are actually going to implement the IMF commitment. There was an interesting article, I think yesterday or 2 days back, by the former governor Raza Bakir, in which he was recounting similar countries' experiences, and particularly, the example of Philippines was mentioned, which faced exactly the similar crisis back in 2004 and 5. But then Philippine government and the community of economists created their own structural reform agenda, and the government seriously implemented it. And in about 1.5 years, they actually prepaid the loans to IMF, And in last 17 or 18 years, Philippines did not have to go back to IMF. So I think it's important that, for instance, if we talk about tax reforms, no, IMF suggested in its agreement that Pakistan government needs to move to a broad-based taxation, even low rate of taxation, and that is also something which we have been advocating, low and flat rate of taxation. And instead we see that in the income tax reforms, we see the coming back of the super tax, which is, I think, not helping, not going to be
The
helpful
super tax is for the supermen.
For the businesses. This is an anti-business and anti-corporate tax. Now, instead of talking about these reforms in real sense, yes, this is coming under the IMF, but the IMF is not asking us to impose super tax. It is the government's own initiative.
I mean, they want to gather how much more? 2.8?
The tax revenue is going up to 7.4 trillion rupees.
That is what they want to show to IMF.
Also the exchange rate. Now, yes, we are committed to a flexible exchange rate. So that's what we have been implementing.
Open market rate,
but,
sir, that's what.
But the problem is that the government is also doing open market and
all right,
throwing
sir.
dollars.
So if you allow me, sir, we've been also joined in by Ariba Shahid, financial analyst. Assalamu alaikum ji.
Aslam, thank you for having me.
Always a pleasure for us to have you in the program. Now, Ariba, talking about a couple of very interesting statements. One of our friends, Shabazz Rana, also wrote an article in which he mentioned that still, when you talk about the total money, that is around 35.1 billion that needs to be filled in. Obviously, after the IMF deal or whatever we do, we are still short of $4 billion, number one. So that is perhaps another very important reason that is putting a lot of pressure on rupee, and dollar today in fact went up and crossed 215 psychological level. Now, since we're talking about this now, another very important factor has been added, and that is about the political uncertainty that we all witnessed today in the market, the stock market or rupee, otherwise international currencies. Where do you see this overall economic perspective moving now from this point onwards? Because the direction seems to be pretty rudderless. I mean, I'm not sure what's going to happen.
So when we talk about the markets, the stock market plummeted as soon as it opened, around 600 points, and then closed negative. And while the stock market could be said that it's not an accurate indicator, at this point in time, the stock market is acting because of the uncertainty in the market. There is a lot of uncertainty regarding what's going to happen on the political front, and because of the political front, we're all concerned about what's going to be happening on the economic front, especially with regards to the program. Now, I was reading earlier today that there are two separate reports, one from a certain news publication saying that the IMF is okay to negotiate or talk to a caretaker setup. The other one is like, it's unsure at this point in time. However, the thing is not who will be on the seat negotiating. The thing is who will stay there. That is the prime concern at this point in time. And as far as all of this is concerned, the yields have risen today. The rupee has depreciated, and for the past few days, the rupee had been depreciating because the US dollar had been appreciating. And usually when you hear news of an IMF program coming through, the market does understand that there will be, a hit in reserves, and reserves are going to come in, which will mean an appreciating rupee. However, that is not the case right now because there is a vast move towards dollarization amidst this uncertainty. So because of the whole political turmoil, I feel that the economy has been handicapped. And as far as the bridge between the gap is concerned, between the financing and how much the government has or needs, it's very important to note that the government has its hands tied as well in terms of how much it can borrow, especially considering the rates at which the banks are lending to it. So considering all this and the inflationary environment, tough times ahead, especially regarding the program as well.
Now, according to Express Tribune, I'll quote, last month that UAE in fact refused to loan money to Pakistan and to give cash, and instead asked to sell shares along with one board seat of the companies whose share the Gulf country would buy. If you remember, there were also reports that when the Saudis gave us the loan, they had certain commitments attached, like one has to return the money within a certain given framework of time, which was less than 72 hours. And if you remember, They also said that, any property that Pakistan government owns abroad would be, let me use this word, takeover, like James Bond says,
Yeah.
hostile takeover. So something of that sort. So I mean, these are not good sentiments. You got my point, right? So what I'm saying is that, I mean, what if we are unable to fill that gap of $4 billion? And what if this IMF deal that's currently going on, because the staff level agreement has been done, now the actual, allocation needs to be done. But what if it is delayed further?
So if it's delayed further, there's just a risk sentiment as it is. FDI is shortening up despite high interest rates. As far as the friendly sentiment that our friendly countries used to have, that not being there is because we're the person, if you're bringing up James Bond, I'm going to bring up your broke friend or anyone's broke friend that shows up every other day asking for a loan, and you see that friend living a frivolous lifestyle. So basically, we've turned into that friend.
I have given that example once, exactly the same one.
We're the broke friend that borrows money and then goes on vacation to Barbados. We're that friend.
And every
And-
time the best friend commits that that money is going to be used very wisely, instead of buying,
it never is.
expensive colognes and all, we'll end up
Yeah,
looking
no.
after
So-
the basic needs of the family.
Yeah, and
There are hardly
Dr.
spending
Bakr,
restraints. We are not doing any spending restraints here.
Dr. Bakr wrote an op-ed on Sunday, which was yesterday, and he talked about how there's a need for people that are not politically affiliated, people who want to do good work, people who do not care about political clout, and come out and make reforms. So at this point, with delays with the IMF, we need stability more than we probably need dollars at this point. Stability first, and then you get dollars.
Last quick, not quick, but you can take your time. Let me start off from you, Ali Salman. We used to hear this charter of democracy. Since today's program is so much interlinked with the politics and the economy, because this is what the game is all about at the end of the day. It is all about money and how the politics are being done, to make money and how to use money to do politics, both ways. Now what I'm saying is, sir, Charter of Democracy was something, we all used to hear about. Can we actually have this Charter of Economy in the real sense, in its true spirit? What needs to be done?
I'm not supportive of a Charter of Economy idea, actually. I think we live in a multi-party democracy, and we live increasingly in a competitive political scenario. And I think there should be competition of ideas. There should be competition of economic manifesto. And I would love to see a Pakistan in which, a Pakistan People's Party, whether welfare or human rights centric agenda, versus PTI, which is governance centric agenda, versus PMLN, which has a center on the infrastructure development agenda, compete with these manifestos and talk to the public, and then let public decide, rather than these political parties decide.
So you believe that it should be a political decision, it should be taken by the politicians.
Yeah,
and it should
I think
yield results also.
each political party has the right to translate its ideals
Sir,
into a clear economic program.
none of your
and then
prime
let
ministers, since
public-
we are talking
yeah,
about politics, sir, none of your prime ministers, ever since Pakistan came into being, sir, none of your prime minister served for a full term.
So is this his fault?
No,
this
no,
is not his
I'm
fault.
not saying it's his
This
fault or
this
her
is not
fault.
the fault of
What I'm
democracy.
saying is, sir,
this is
your
your
history.
This is the fault of the
For the
overall
last
systematic
75
problems.
years. So when we
Yeah.
talk about political uncertainty, sir, it's not only limited to PTI or PMLN election, by-election rather.
Yeah, but historically, if you see, let's say, well, let me give you one example. For instance, the role of the government in the business. Now, yes, we have a very intensive nationalization program in 1970s, but we never went back to a nationalization agenda. So I think
You're not North Korea, sir.
in some forms, there is a consensus across all the political parties, right? So yes, we may not have aggressively
But sir, that
pursued
nationalization
privatism.
program was also one extreme decision.
That's right. That's what my point is, that
So
there
can't we do
does
something in
exist a
between,
consensus. There does exist a consensus. in
Like
some
the
ways.
public sector is there to facilitate the private sector, and in most cases, if this if they are both wed.
Yeah.
So they don't leave each other.
We need a good government,
So
and
that is what is required.
we need a good government, and we need a good private sector. Certainly, we need both to work, but we don't need the government in the business. We need the government to implement laws and regulations, and we need the private sector to deliver.
But this change you just cannot expect, certainly, overnight change. That tomorrow every Pakistani is going to wake up and will be a different person.
No,
oh
obviously,
wow! So we will follow the Scandinavian
we have to follow the
rules.
rules. We have to give the system a chance. We never give system a chance, and we always externally manipulate it.
All right, Ariba, there you go. Your turn.
Again, like you said, it's not PTI versus PMLN or PMLN versus People's Party. It's a structural issue in the country that we will never get long-lasting reserves when every political party that comes into power is fearful whether they're going to stay or not. So what happens is if a government has like 5 years, what they do is in the first few years, they make tough stances that are long-term policies because usually they're in an IMF program. And following that, what happens is that as soon as they're out of the program, they go frivolous. They start spending because they know they're in election year. And when they're in election year, they spend like crazy and they undo everything they've done in the past. So that is essentially what happened. Like, for instance, in February this year, when fuel subsidies were reversed, that was frivolous spending and undoing all the good that had been done in the past. This will continue to happen when and as long as governments are insecure of their position and governments are insecure whether they will continue. Political certainty is important for economic development in the country, and so we get out of the boom bust cycle eventually.
When we talk about this financial discipline, don't you think there could be some sort of a commitment by all these parties, perhaps top 3-4 parties, and they should come up with some sort of a solution that if a certain policy is being followed, let it continue. It is really benefiting the public rather than changing its name and its course and the amount and everything. What I mean?
No, Faisal, absolutely, that's absolutely right. But in addition to that, if all the parties just sit down together and they realize and they agree, okay, listen, if the petrol prices increase internationally and someone is increasing the prices, we're not going to come up with words called petrol bump. Media has to do better as well. We are not going to criticize people. We're not going to criticize the government for taking right stances that are tough. We will choose what's best for the country, not a political narrative. If 3 parties decide to do that, if they decide to make their comment political bias free and based on economic fundamentals, we can see a growth in Pakistan. But unfortunately, we don't see that happening. So for instance, if the next time the petrol prices increase in the country because we need to meet our PDL targets for the year, the media does not do petrol bum has been dropped on people and the opposition does not go like, oh my God, they're stealing from you. That is when we can see real change come into the country.
All right, let's see and let's hope that real change comes and comes soon. Anyway, Ariba, thank you very much for your presence. It was a pleasure having you. Thank you very much, Ali Salman Saab.
Thank you, Faisal.
It was a pleasure having you as well. And that's all we have. But at the end of the day, the story is that the financial issues are very much there. It's a clear and present danger. That's how I look at it, at least. But there are always ways and means to overcome these obstacles. But the end result should matter more. How wisely the money is used. When you talk about the structural reforms, how do you really need to implement and first of all create them? And secondly, when it comes to the expenditure, especially on the government side, I think one has to be very, very wise there as well, because we see a lot of incidents where we believe that this thing should have been taken care of and in a much more appropriate way. When you talk about the overall economic indicators, very few are good. Most of them are alarming, and that's another reality. But when you look at the kind of commitment by some of the, I would say, individuals in the leadership from various parties, I think if they can join hands, and perhaps because at the end of the day, it's your country which matters more. None of these political parties would matter. Pakistan means the real issue here, because I would say that at the end of the day, politics, they do have a lot of impact on the economy. But when you are strong in economy, just look at the example of smaller countries like Singapore. Discipline is there, and look at their export. It's unbelievable. Look at Taiwan for that matter. Smaller countries, Vietnam, they are doing so good. And at one time, not that far long ago, about 20 years ago, we were ahead than Vietnam. We were one of the best performing markets. We were one of the best investment area, you know, where people would come and invest. But and the growth rate at that time, remember, Pakistan in fact touched 8.4% also. Dollar remained constant at 61 rupees for a very long time. So yes, there was the same Pakistan 20 years ago, but things did go wrong. But let's see what happens in the future. I think one has to take wise decisions. Anyway, I'll see you tomorrow at 8:05. Till then, you take good care. Khuda Hafiz.